Raghav Sharma wasn't afraid of the forest. At 32, he had hiked, climbed, and camped across some of the world's most rugged terrain. Patagonia, the Rockies, the remote corners of the Indian Himalayas. But this time, he had chosen solitude, not adventure. No guides, no friends. Just his tent, a backpack, and the untouched silence of a Himalayan forest, untouched by roads, tourists, or even maps. 3 days in, he found the perfect spot. A small mossy clearing between two ancient pine trees. There was a stream nearby, enough dry wood for a fire, and no signs of animals or humans. He pitched his tent, brewed tea over his portable stove, and watched the fog roll between the mountains as the sun dipped behind the peaks. The wind carried the scent of pine and wet soil. Perfect. That night, the forest sang him to sleep. The whisper of wind through branches, the distant hoot of an owl, and the occasional snapping of twigs as some nocturnal animal moved through the underbrush. He slept peacefully. The second night, everything changed. It was around 1:47 a.m. He checked his watch when he woke up to it. Something faint, something rhythmic, not quite a voice, not quite the wind. Raghav, he blinked. Raghav, he sat up, heartbeat rising. It was coming from outside the tent. Just the wind, he told himself. A trick of the breeze against the nylon, trees groaning in the cold, the mind inventing voices out of chaos. He zipped open the small window on the tent flap. The moon cast long, pale shadows through the trees. Everything looked still, silent. He waited, listened, nothing. After 15 minutes of holding his breath and gripping his flashlight, he laid back down, chuckling nervously. Need to get more sleep, he muttered. But then, scratch. A deliberate touch, like fingers trailing along the side of the tent. He bolted upright. This time, there was no mistaking it. He held his breath, flicked on the flashlight, and inched toward the flap. The whisper came again, clearer now. Raghav! Unzipping the flap felt like peeling back the skin of safety. He aimed the flashlight into the dark and froze. There, crouched no more than 10 feet away, was a figure. Human, maybe, but distorted. Its spine was arched, unnaturally sharp like a broken umbrella. Its skin was gray, damp-looking, like it had been buried for days. And slowly, horrifyingly, its head turned all the way around. The face was upside down, expressionless, except for those eyes, reflective, animalistic, glowing silver in his flashlight beam, like 2 coins dropped into a well. Then a smile, too wide, too slow. Raghav screamed. The figure vanished in an instant, collapsing into the underbrush with a grotesque snapping sound. When Raghav rushed out, light swinging wildly, there was nothing. No prints, no snapped branches, just the wind again. Daylight brought no comfort. Raghav packed his gear in a frenzy. The whispers had stopped at dawn, but the forest felt wrong. He couldn't explain it, but the trees no longer felt like trees. The wind no longer felt like wind. He began his trek back toward the trailhead, 15 miles away. No cell signal, no GPS. He followed his compass and tried not to look over his shoulder. But the whispering didn't stop. Now, it followed him in daylight. Software, mocking. Raghav. Sometimes it came from behind a tree, sometimes from under a rock. Once, horrifyingly, from above, like something hanging in the canopy. That evening, despite every instinct, he set up his tent again. Exhaustion had its grip on him. He built a fire, stacked logs in a perimeter, and kept the flashlight in his lap. He didn't sleep, not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that thing's neck snapping, the reflective eyes, the smile. He woke up gasping at 3 a.m., sweat soaking through his thermal jacket. The whispers were back. Only now, they weren't just saying his name. They were mimicking him, repeating things he'd said during the day. His laughter, his voice, cursing at the cold, even his panic. Raghav, where's your brave face now? Need to get more sleep. Stupid, stupid, stupid. It was like something had been following him the entire time, listening, learning. He lit the fire again and sat there till sunrise, whispering prayers to gods he didn't believe in anymore. On the fourth day, Raghav stumbled onto something that made his blood turn to ice. A tent, just like his, molded over with moss and half swallowed by the earth. Its nylon flaps fluttered like torn skin. A rusted lantern sat beside it, shattered. Next to it, a boot. And inside the boot, bones, old, cracked, weather-bleached. Inside the tent, scribbled on the inside walls in black marker, were these words: "Don't listen to it. It knows your name. Don't look at its eyes. It never leaves." The final note, scratched into the plastic with what looked like a fingernail. "You're not alone." Raghav bolted. He didn't stop running until the sun started to dip again. No trail, no map. His compass needle spun lazily, as if even it wanted to flee. That night he didn't pitch the tent. He hid under a tree root, wrapped in his sleeping bag, clutching a pocket knife. But the whispers were already there, and this time they weren't outside. They were inside his head. "Let us in, Raghav. You saw me. Now I see you. You're mine now." His body froze. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. And then in a moment that shattered every shred of logic, his flashlight turned on by itself, pointing directly at the base of the nearest tree. And there it was again, closer, smiling, crawling. Its mouth opened, impossibly wide, and in the same voice as Raghav's mother, it whispered, "Come home, beta." He blacked out. They found him 7 days later. A search team had been dispatched after he missed his return date. They discovered him wandering aimlessly near a riverbed, his shoes missing, lips cracked, hands clawed with scratches. His eyes wouldn't focus. He kept muttering to himself, over and over, "Don't unzip it. Don't unzip it. Don't look. Don't answer when it calls." They brought him back to the nearest town. A psychiatric evaluation followed. The doctor said it was stress, isolation, altitude psychosis. But Raghav never recovered. He refused to sleep in enclosed spaces, flinched at wind, spoke to himself at night. Sometimes he'd burst into tears when someone said his name. The final entry in his journal, written before he burned all his camping gear and moved to a windowless apartment, read, "It's still whispering. I think it followed me back. The tent was never the prison. My name is." The sun had just begun to set when Ammon, Ritesh, and Neha arrived at the edge of the Briar Glen Forest Reserve, a dense, lesser-known stretch of woods that had recently opened for backcountry camping. Hidden from the main tourist trails and wrapped in local myths, the forest was exactly what they were looking for. Secluded, peaceful, and off-grid. "God, it smells like pine and secrets out here," Neha joked as she slung her backpack onto the forest floor. "Perfect place for us to finally unplug," Ritesh added, pulling out the tent gear. They pitched their tents beside a narrow creek that hummed softly with the sounds of flowing water and chirping insects. A canopy of gnarled trees loomed overhead, filtering the remaining daylight into warm, golden shards. By nightfall, a fire crackled in the middle of their camp. The trio sat cross-legged around it, toasting marshmallows, sipping cheap whiskey, and trading ghost stories that grew darker as the night deepened. The flames danced higher as laughter echoed into the surrounding woods. "So there I was," Ammon said dramatically, "in my room at 2 a.m., lights flickering, the mirror fogged even though I hadn't showered." Okay, shut up," Neha interrupted with a giggle. "That story again?" Suddenly Ritesh paused mid-laugh. "Guys," he said, voice low. "Someone's coming." They all turned. From the dense tree line, a man slowly emerged, barefoot, clothes caked in mud, hair matted and tangled. His eyes were wide and glassy, like he hadn't blinked in days. He didn't say a word, He simply walked straight into their circle and sat at the edge of the fire like he belonged there. He didn't look at them, just stared into the flames, still and silent. Aman shot Neha a look. She shrugged, half nervous, half curious. Ritesh cleared his throat. "Hey man, you okay? You lost, or something?" No reply. "Do you need help?" Neha tried, more gently. The man didn't even flinch. For a long, agonizing minute, the only sound was the firewood popping and the creek whispering behind them. Then the man spoke, his voice hoarse and dry as leaves. "I used to be human too." They froze. Aman blinked. "What does that mean?" But before anyone could say more, a strong gust of wind blew through the clearing. Sparks lifted into the air. The fire hissed louder, as if responding. And just like that, the man was gone. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, nothing. He had vanished, like smoke. The three stared at the spot where he'd sat, now empty except for a small imprint in the dirt. I didn't see him get up," Neha whispered. "Neither did I," Ritesh said, standing up and scanning the woods with a flashlight. "Maybe he's messing with us." But the beam revealed no figure, no footprints leading away, just forest. They didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every shifting shadow kept them wide-eyed in their tents. The morning sun did little to comfort them. Still unnerved, they packed up early and hiked back to the forest station near the trailhead. There they found a forest ranger sipping coffee on a bench outside the cabin. Aman approached him. "Hey, sir, we saw someone weird last night." A guy came out of the woods and sat with us. He looked homeless, barefoot, didn't speak for a while, then said something strange and disappeared. The ranger's face lost all color. "By the creek?" "Yeah." The ranger set down his mug, hands trembling slightly. "That sounds like Eli Marks." "Who?" Neha asked. The ranger took a breath. 20 years ago, a guy named Eli came out here on a solo camping trip, never returned. When we found his campsite, everything was still there. Tent, bag, even food. Just no Eli. But before he disappeared, he told some hikers nearby he was hearing voices in the fire, said he wanted to join it. No one believed him. We never found a body. "Wait," Ritesh said. "Are you saying we saw a ghost?" The ranger's eyes were distant now. "There've been sightings, always the same. He walks into someone's camp, sits by the fire, says that same line, then gone." "And the people he visits?" Aman asked. The ranger hesitated. "They leave, but they don't come back the same. Some never talk again. Some disappear weeks later. One guy walked into a bonfire in his backyard, said Eli was calling." Neha's breath caught. "You're joking." "I wish I was." The ranger handed them a yellowed newspaper clipping from a folder inside the cabin. "Local man missing in Briar Glen Forest. Only his voice remains." Beneath it, a photo of Eli Marks, a scruffy, with wild eyes. It was the same man. Over the next week, the trio tried to move on. But things got strange. Aman stopped sleeping. He claimed every time he closed his eyes, he saw the fire again, burning in reverse, flames sucking in light instead of giving it off. Ritesh became withdrawn, refusing to talk about the trip. One night, he was found sitting in his apartment bathtub, fully clothed, muttering, "It's warmest near the flames." Neha's behavior shifted too. She stopped eating, spent hours staring into a candle, whispering Eli's words again and again. "I used to be human too." They started dreaming the same dream. A forest clearing with no stars above, just swirling smoke and Eli, always sitting, always watching. 2 weeks later, Ritesh was found wandering the edge of Briar Glen. He had hiked back alone, barefoot, whispering to the trees. The authorities found burn marks on his palms, though there had been no fire. Neha disappeared next. Her phone was found on her kitchen counter, its camera roll filled with dozens of blurred images of fire. Some appeared to have faces in the flames, distorted, screaming. Only Aman remained. He checked into a motel 3 towns over, scared to sleep, scared to see that clearing again. But each night, the fire found him. in flickering TV static, in the reflection of his coffee cup, in the red glow of his alarm clock. On his last night, he recorded a voice memo on his phone. His voice trembled as he spoke. "He's here. Eli's in the fire. He's not alone anymore. There's more of them now. They whisper when the flames crackle. I can hear Ritesh and Neha. They want me to come back, to sit with them. But I don't want to stop being human." The phone was found beside a cold fire pit in Briar Glen 2 days later. The fire hadn't been lit, but the ground around it was scorched, and 4 indentations were left in the dirt, where someone or something had been sitting. Locals say if you camp near the creek on a quiet night, the fire won't feel warm. It'll feel hungry, and if you hear someone say, "I used to be human too," it's already too late. So if you ever find yourself deep in Briar Glen, and a stranger walks out of the woods to join your fire, don't let him sit down. The air was sharp with the scent of pine. Mist clung to the surface of the still lake like an old memory refusing to fade. Tanya zipped her jacket up to her chin and gazed across the water as the sun dipped low, casting amber light across the trees. "I can't believe we have this whole place to ourselves," she said, pulling her phone out to snap a photo. Rohit grinned, setting up the tent a few feet away. "That's what happens when locals are superstitious. Their fear is our private resort." Tanya rolled her eyes. "The lake remembers. That's what the old guy at the gas station said, right?" Rohit stood, brushing dirt off his hands. "Yeah, he looked like he'd seen a ghost himself." They both laughed, but unease flickered behind Tanya's eyes. Still, this was their first anniversary, a camping trip just like they used to dream about in college. Remote, isolated, pure nature. They roasted marshmallows that night and lay under the stars, wrapped in a shared sleeping bag. Crickets chirped in the distance, and the lake glowed faintly beneath a half-moon. The first night was peaceful, but the second night shattered everything. It was around 1:13 a.m. when Tanya woke with a jolt. She hadn't heard anything. She felt something. A stillness. The crickets had gone quiet. Rohit stirred beside her. Then came the scream, high-pitched, echoing, human, young. They both froze. "That's a child," Tanya whispered, eyes wide. Rohit grabbed the flashlight, unzipping the tent with shaky fingers. "Someone might be hurt." Tanya followed, heart pounding. The mist had returned, thicker now. It curled around the pines and hovered over the water like a veil. At the lake's edge, they stopped. "Do you see that?" Rohit asked, voice hollow. On the lake's surface stood a silhouette, small, barefoot, arms at its side, a child, standing on the water, unmoving, facing them. The beam of the flashlight flickered over the figure, and in that moment, Tanya swore she saw eyes. Hollow, empty, and then it was gone. Just like that. Vanished. They didn't sleep. By dawn, they were hiking back through the forest trail, cold and jumpy, flinching at every branch that cracked underfoot. It took them hours, but eventually they reached the ranger station. An old man with a buzz cut and a deep tan looked up from a logbook as they burst in. "There was a scream," Tanya said, trembling. "A child, last night, on the lake." The ranger didn't speak right away. Instead, he leaned back slowly in his chair and took off his cap. "You were camping near Wraith Lake, weren't you?" Rohit nodded. "We didn't know it was called that. On the map, it's just Lake Dorson," the ranger finished. "Yeah, that's its name on paper, but nobody who lives here calls it that anymore." "Why not?" Tanya asked, voice tightening. The ranger sighed. "There was a boy, 6 years old, went missing around 20 years ago. Parents had a campsite on the north side. It was cold and raining that night. The story is the boy got out of the tent looking for them. Wandered too close to the lake. Rohit swallowed hard. He drowned. Never found the body, just his little shoe, floating by the reeds." The ranger leaned forward now, his face serious. "His parents went into the lake after him, also never found. Since then, people who camp too close say they hear things, Screams. They see a child standing on the water. Tanya shook her head, pale. We saw him. We heard the scream. The ranger's eyes darkened. Then you need to leave. Now. Wait. Why? Because they say when you hear the scream a second time, it's already too late. They packed up in silence. The forest felt wrong now. Tanya noticed birds flying away in flocks. The scent of pine was gone, replaced by the faint metallic smell of wet stone. Even Rohit was quiet, checking over his shoulder every few minutes. They had decided to cut the trip short and drive to a hotel, just for the night, anywhere but there. It was almost 7 p.m. when they returned to their camp to tear it down. The lake looked normal again. The mist was lighter, the water still, too still. Tanya turned to gather the last of their gear when she noticed something. A small footprint, wet, barefoot, pressed into the mud by the edge of their tent. "Rohit," she whispered. Then the wind picked up. It wasn't natural. It howled from the lake inward, like breath being sucked from the water itself. The air grew frigid. Their firewood tumbled over, and the tent flapped violently. Rohit dropped the duffel and grabbed Tanya's hand. "Run!" They sprinted for the trail. Trees blurred by. Twigs snapped. A low humming sound built in the air, deep, pulsing, like something rising from below the surface. They reached the car just as the first scream hit. Louder, closer. It sounded like it was right behind them. Tanya turned, breath fogging the air, and saw him again. The child. This time, he was on the shore, standing still, head tilted, eyes black. His mouth opened, wider than any human mouth should, and from it came the second scream, a raw, endless wail of anguish and rage. Rohit shoved the keys in, fumbling. The car sputtered. The child didn't move, but the water behind him did. Something began rising from it. Arms more children, no faces, just shapes, dozens of them. As if the lake was vomiting out the lost. The engine roared to life. They peeled out of the lot, dirt spraying behind them, Tanya sobbing silently in the seat. She didn't look back, not until they reached a motel 30 miles out. They didn't speak much that night. Rohit locked the door 3 times. Tanya kept the bathroom light on. At 2:11 a.m., the shower turned on by itself. Rohit checked it. No one was there. The mirror was fogged. In the condensation, tiny handprints were smeared across the glass. They didn't sleep. The next day, they visited the town library and asked for any articles about the lake. The librarian, a woman in her 50s, lowered her glasses and said nothing, but handed them a folder. Inside were newspaper clippings. Local family vanishes at Dawson Lake. Child believed to have drowned. Search called off. No remains recovered after 5 years. And one black and white photo. The boy, standing with his parents, smiling. Tanya pointed to him with a shaking finger. "That's him." Rohit stared at the picture. How can he still be there? After all these years, the librarian quietly said, "The lake doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive." They never returned to the lake, but it didn't seem to matter. For weeks after, Tanya would hear whispers in the shower. Rohit would find the car unlocked, muddy footprints on the back seat. Then one night, Tanya woke up alone in bed. Rohit was gone. The bathroom light was on. She approached slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. She pushed the door open, and there, in the bathtub, full of lake water, stood the child. He turned his head slowly and screamed. Rohit was found unconscious by the motel pool, drenched, shaking, no signs of a break-in, no signs of Tanya. She was never seen again. The last thing recorded on her phone, found beside the bed, was an audio file. Just one thing on it, a scream. Manav Desai wasn't new to the wilderness. As a travel vlogger with over 300,000 subscribers, he'd hiked deep forests, climbed treacherous cliffs, and spent nights alone in some of the loneliest corners of America. His audience Loved the solitude, the survival tips, and the beautiful footage of nature most people never saw. But this time felt different. It was late September when Manav arrived at the Black Hollow National Forest, a secluded and lesser-known stretch of woods in Oregon. He had picked this location specifically because it was off the radar. No cell service, no park rangers, no other campers. Just him, his camera, and the forest. He found a clearing surrounded by tall pine trees, a perfect circle open to the sky. As the sun dipped behind the trees, he set up his single-person tent and gathered firewood. "Hey, everyone, it's Manav," he said into his camera with a grin. "Today we're camping deep in the heart of Black Hollow. No phone, no people, just us in the forest. Let's see what this place has to offer." He filmed his usual campfire cooking segment, fried some sausages, and shared stories from past trips. The sky turned violet, then black, as he crawled into his sleeping bag and zipped up the tent. The fire still flickered outside, casting moving shadows across the canvas. All seemed normal until 2:14 a.m. A sharp jolt pulled him from sleep. Not a sound, not a movement, just a feeling, that eerie, inescapable sensation that someone was watching him. Manav sat up inside the tent, his ears strained against the silence. The fire was still burning low outside, casting a soft orange ring around his camp, and then he saw it, a shape, standing still between two trees just outside the firelight. Too far to see clearly, but unmistakably human, unmoving, watching. "Hey!" he shouted. The figure didn't respond, didn't flinch, didn't move at all. Manav's throat tightened. He groped for his camera, hit record, and slowly unzipped the flap just enough to poke the lens out. Zoomed in, he could see it was a man, or at least a man-shaped silhouette. The darkness swallowed the details, but the outline was clear. Shoulders, head, arms at the side, still, silent. "I don't know if this is some creep or a ranger messing with me," Manav whispered into the mic, "but there's a guy just standing out there. Not doing anything, just staring." After 10 minutes of no movement, Manav zipped the tent shut and forced himself to lie back down. Eyes open, muscles tense. Eventually he must have dozed off. When he woke at sunrise, the figure was gone. The next day, he scouted the area. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing to suggest someone or something had stood there. He told himself it had to be a weird hiker, or maybe a trick of the light and exhaustion. That night, he kept the fire going longer and set up a second camera facing the tree line. Sleep didn't come easy. At 1:58 a.m., he woke again. Cold sweat, same feeling, and there it was, closer now, just past the edge of the firelight. The figure stood with shoulders slumped forward. Something was wrong about its face. Manav grabbed the camera, zoomed in, and froze. It was his face, paler, lifeless, dark circles under the eyes, lips slightly parted, and blank, utterly emotionless. "Who are you?" Manav shouted, voice cracking. No answer. The figure didn't even blink. He scrambled to light another torch and tossed it toward the tree line. The light flared, but the figure was gone. No sound, no rustling, just gone. He didn't sleep again. Morning brought a heavy fog. Manav tore through the camera footage with shaking hands. Hours passed. Frame by frame, he watched. At 2 a.m. the figure stepped into frame. It didn't walk. It glided. The shape circled the fire, slow and deliberate, before stopping right outside the tent. For 4 straight hours, it stood inches from the camera, motionless. Then at 5:48 a.m., just before sunrise, it leaned forward and looked directly into the lens. Manav's face, but wrong. The lips curled ever so slightly into a smirk, and the eyes, empty black pits, seemed to look straight through the screen. Manav slammed the laptop shut and stumbled backward, heart pounding. He wanted to leave. He should have left, but something in him, maybe pride, maybe obsession, kept him there another night. He needed answers, needed proof. He set up 3 cameras this time, one on a tree pointing at the tent, one inside, and one with infrared. As the sky darkened, the forest grew impossibly quiet. Not a single chirp, hoot, or rustle. At 2:12 a.m. the figure returned, but it wasn't outside anymore. It was inside the tent. The footage would later show Manav sleeping soundly. Then behind him, the tent's fabric began to shift, as if something invisible was crawling inside without unzipping the door. Suddenly he appeared, the copy, sitting cross-legged beside the real Manav, and then the copy started watching him sleep. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. Manav awoke with a gasp and saw himself staring down at him from the corner of the tent. He screamed and scrambled backward, knocking over the camera, but there was no one there. The corner was empty. He burst out of the tent into the freezing air and ran. Didn't pack, didn't grab anything, just ran. The camera still recorded as he vanished into the forest. That was 6 months ago. The ranger station found his tent still intact. Campfire long dead. Cameras still rolling. Everything was untouched, except for one thing. All the footage of the third night was erased, except the very last 10 seconds. In that clip, the figure, Manav's duplicate, walks up to the camera, face close, eyes dead, mouth twitching like it's learning to smile. And in a voice that sounds almost, but not quite, like Manav, it says, "He left. I'll finish the episode now." They were supposed to be gone for only a weekend. Just a simple hike, a break from university stress, a break from endless screens and late-night cramming. Arjun had found the trail online, some obscure subreddit talking about unmarked paths up near the old Hemlock Ridge in Oregon. "Trust me," he said, "it's going to be epic." And so, with little hesitation, Arjun, Pooja, Kunal, and Dev packed their bags and set out, 4 friends chasing quiet, fresh air, and something real. The hike was tougher than expected. The trees grew denser the farther they climbed, and GPS signals had long since vanished, but spirits stayed high, and jokes filled the trail. By the second day, they stumbled on it. A clearing, wide and green, cradled by trees so tall they seemed to touch the clouds. Ferns covered the ground like a velvet carpet. Wildflowers bloomed in unnatural clusters. The sky above was impossibly blue. "Dude, this isn't on any map," Kunal said, spinning in place. "We just found our own secret paradise. No trails, no trash." Dev grinned. "It's untouched." They pitched their tents under the high pines, built a fire from fallen wood, and laughed late into the evening. Pooja took selfies. Kunal started carving their initials into a nearby tree. The 4 of them toasted marshmallows and told spooky stories around the flames, not knowing that they had already crossed over. That night, the stars were too many. It was like the sky had opened a curtain. Millions of stars blinked above them, glittering unnaturally bright. The clearing was silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, no wind, just fire crackling and their slow, sleepy breathing. As the others began to drift into sleep, Pooja heard it, a sound, faint and regular. Tick, tick, tick. It was deep, like it came from beneath the earth, slower than a clock, more like a heartbeat slowed to a crawl. She sat up in her sleeping bag, straining to hear, but it faded as suddenly as it came. Probably a weird echo, she told herself. Just the woods playing tricks. She slipped back into sleep, unaware that Dev's sleeping bag would be empty by morning. The sun didn't rise. Instead, the sky glowed red, a dull, bloody hue that never shifted, like the sun had been replaced with a warning light. Shadows stretched wrong. The trees had changed. They weren't the same trees. Where thick oaks had been, now stood blackened trunks with spiraled bark, like they had been twisted by unseen hands. The leaves were too large. Some had eyes. Kunal was the first to scream. Dev was gone. His bag lay open, cold, but all his gear was still there. His shoes, his flashlight, even his water bottle. Everything untouched, except for a single thing scratched into the soil with a jagged stone. He chose to stay. They stood frozen, not just scared, unmoored. "What the hell does that mean?" Arjun whispered. "He's messing with us," Kunal said, too loud. "He must have wandered off before sunrise. It's a prank. That's what this is, right? Right?" But even as he spoke, his voice echoed weirdly, like the forest held its breath. They shouted for Dev until their throats ached. No reply, no birds, no insects, no trails, just the sound of their own fear closing in. By afternoon they packed what they could and tried to retrace their steps. Every direction led nowhere, paths looped, rocks reappeared where they shouldn't. They marked trees with scratches, only to find the marks gone minutes later, or already there but carved deeper. Like they'd been made years ago, the woods were folding in on themselves. That night, they built another fire. A small one, just enough to see. They barely spoke. Pooja clutched her phone, even though it had no service. Arjun gripped a camping knife. Kunal rocked back and forth, whispering Dev's name under his breath. And then, just past the firelight, they saw him. Developer standing in the trees, barefoot. His clothes were dirty, but not torn. He had no injuries. He wasn't shivering. He was smiling. "Dev!" Pooja gasped, jumping up. "Dev!" But he didn't move, didn't speak, just smiled, eyes wide, face still, like a mannequin come to life. "Come back to camp, man," Arjun called, taking a step forward. But Dev took one step back, into the darkness, and was gone. The next day, Pooja wanted to follow him. Arjun refused. Kunal cried. They tried hiking in a new direction. The same result, a loop, a trap. The air grew heavier with every hour, like it was getting harder to exist. The red sky pulsed faintly. By nightfall, Dev appeared again. Only this time, there were two of him. One stood behind the fire. The other stood by the tents, both smiling, both still. Too still, not breathing, not blinking, just watching. The friends didn't sleep that night. By day 4, Kunal had snapped. He ran into the woods, screaming, "I'm not playing this game anymore. You want me? Take me." They chased after him. But he moved fast, farther than should have been possible. His screams faded into the forest, swallowed like everything else. They never found him, only his sleeping bag back at the camp, with a new message scratched in the dirt. He stopped resisting. Pooja broke down. Arjun tried to stay strong, but even he began to mumble to himself. "We were never supposed to find this place. We weren't invited." On the 5th night, the woods whispered. Not in English, not in words, just a sound like breathing from everywhere at once. The trees creaked without wind. The fire refused to stay lit. And behind them, always watching, Dev, now joined by Kunal. Both smiling, both motionless, both dead-eyed. Pooja woke up to find Arjun gone, his gear untouched. No sign of a struggle, just another message. He listened. Now only she remained. Pooja stopped trying to escape. The forest didn't want her to leave. It had made that clear, but it hadn't taken her yet. Why? She began speaking to the air, to the whispers, to development, to Kunal, to Arjun. "If you want me, take me," she said one night, standing barefoot in the center of the camp. "Stop playing." Dev stepped forward. So did the others. 3 figures now. All smiling, all wrong. She closed her eyes, and the ticking began again. Tick, tick, tick. That was 2 years ago. This week, a group of hikers from Portland found a campsite in the middle of Hemlock Ridge. It wasn't on any map. There were 4 tents, mostly rotted, some old camping gear, long buried in moss, and 3 sleeping bags. Inside one was a cracked phone, screen black, but somehow still faintly glowing. The photo showed 4 smiling friends. One of the girls, Pooja, stood in the center, flashing a peace sign. But in the very last photo, taken in the clearing after dark, Pooja stood alone. Behind her were 3 blurry, tall figures, all smiling, all watching.